Hey everyone, welcome. Today, we are diving into the timeless story of Joshua and Caleb. These two were true giants of faith, and their lives are just packed with powerful lessons for us. They really show us what it means to stand firm, to have courage, even when it feels like everything is stacked against you. So let's get into it. We're going to kick things off with this quote because it just perfectly captures the spirit of these two heroes. In a world that's full of compromise, where values seem to shift all the time, the need for men and women with that kind of unshakable integrity, well, it's bigger than ever. And Joshua and Caleb, they were exactly those kinds of men. All right, so let's set the scene. Our story starts at this huge, pivotal moment. They're at a place called Kadesh Barnea, right on the very edge of the Promised Land. The entire nation of Israel is basically holding its breath, just waiting for 12 spies to come back and give their report. I mean, the fate of a whole generation is hanging on what they're about to say. And wow, just look at the difference here. On one side, you've got the report from 10 of the spies, and it is just dripping with fear. They saw giants, massive fortified cities, and all they could think about was how small they were. They literally said they felt like grasshoppers. But then you look at Joshua and Caleb's report. They saw the exact same things, but they saw something else too, God's promise. Their response was all faith. Let's go. We can absolutely do this because God is with us. And words have incredible power, don't they? That majority report, the one full of fear, it spread like a virus through the whole camp. Discouragement just spiraled down into open rebellion. It got so bad, the Bible tells us people were weeping all night, even making plans to pick a new leader and head right back to slavery in Egypt. They were ready to throw away God's promise, all because of a bad report. So you gotta ask, right? What made Joshua and Caleb so different from the other 10? How could they see promise where everyone else saw problems? The Bible gives us a clue. It says they had a different spirit. So let's dig into what that actually means. Now, having a different spirit, it wasn't about them being naive or just ignoring the giants in the big cities. Not at all. It was about seeing a God who is so much bigger than any giant. Their faith wasn't in their own strength. It was totally rooted in the power and the faithfulness of the God who had already brought them so far. But let me tell you, taking a stand like that, it was not easy. Their faith-filled report made the terrified crowd so angry that people actually started picking up stones to kill them. Standing up for God, even among God's own people, took an incredible amount of courage. It was only because God stepped in right at that moment that their lives were saved. The Bible uses this really specific phrase to describe what made Caleb and Joshua so special. It says they wholly followed the Lord. And that idea is right at the heart of their story, so let's take a closer look at what it really means to do that. And it's so important to get this. This isn't about being perfect or never making a mistake. As Dr. Medjugorje points out, the original Hebrew phrase really means something like being fully after the Lord. It's all about a life of complete consecration, a total surrender, where you're holding nothing back from God. It's about the direction of your whole life. I love this illustration here. It makes so much sense. Think about your life like it's a house. We all have that tidy living room, right? The part of our lives we're happy to show everybody. But we also have those hidden rooms that might be a little messy, areas we keep private, and maybe even a locked wardrobe, with the stuff we really try to hide. To wholly follow the Lord means giving God the key to every single room, even the messy ones, even the locked ones. It's about giving him total access and total trust. And this kind of wholehearted commitment, for Joshua and Caleb, this wasn't just a one-time brave decision. It was the thing that defined their entire lives, and it created this powerful, lasting legacy. Just look at this timeline for Caleb. At 40 years old, he's the young spy taking that courageous stand. Then, for the next 45 years, he wanders in the wilderness, watching an entire generation die off because of their lack of faith. But he keeps his own faith alive. And then, at 85, he is still just as strong, just as faithful, and ready for whatever comes next. Now that is persistent faith. So what does he do at 85 years old? He's not asking for an easy retirement plan. Nope. He asks for the hardest job there is. He points to the hill country, the very place where the giants lived that terrified everyone else 45 years earlier, and he says, I want that one. Give me that mountain. His confidence wasn't in himself. It was in God's promise that never changes. Now, Joshua's faith was every bit as strong, but it showed up a little differently in his role as the leader of the nation. While Caleb was this bold warrior, always ready for a fight. Joshua modeled a quieter, but just as profound kind of humility. I mean, just stop and think about this for a second. He's the leader. He just led the entire nation in conquering the land. He could have easily picked out the best piece of real estate for himself right at the beginning, but he didn't. Instead, he made sure every single tribe got their inheritance first, and only after everyone else was taken care of did he take what was left over for himself. That's a true servant's heart right there. So these incredible stories of Joshua and Caleb, they're not just here for us to admire from a distance. They're actually part of a much bigger story, and they're meant to point us toward an even greater example of faith. You know, the book of Hebrews calls people like Joshua and Caleb a great cloud of witnesses. Their lives are there to inspire us and encourage us, for sure. But their real job, the reason their stories are in the Bible, is to get us to turn our focus away from them and onto Jesus, the real author and finisher of our faith. And this gets to a really deep spiritual truth. We become what we focus on. When we really contemplate the life of Jesus, his character, his selfless love, his incredible sacrifice, that's what actually changes us. The more we look at him, the more we are transformed to be like him. So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with this question to think about. Caleb had that different spirit. What does that look like for us today, in our own lives, surrounded by our own modern-day giants and challenges? How can we cultivate that same spirit of courage that isn't swayed by the crowd, that conviction that's rooted deep in God's promises, and that complete trust that's willing to give God the key to every single room of our hearts?